Welcome to another special book overview episode of our Mandatory Mental Liberation series, produced by Baba Jelani Bomani Dembe, founder of Majestic Mind Matters University. I'm your royal narrator, Queen Magical Melanin, for this new book overview episode titled, White Fear, How Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, Roland S. Martin with Leah Lakin. The necessity of the Mandatory Mental Liberation series at Majestic Mind Matters University lies in our focus on serving our melanin-rich culture communities. By addressing the importance of knowledge of self to produce greater self-awareness and advocating for our mental liberation, but especially for our precious melanin-rich culture children, our messages aims to combat the enduring effects of generational mental enslavement stemming from the historical trauma of the chattel enslavement of the ancestors. Our initiative seeks to empower us to break free from these harmful and unfavorable legacies and cultivate a deep-rooted sense of self-identity and unwavering resilience. In their book White Fear, How Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, Roland S. Martin and Leah Lakin delve into the complex issues surrounding race and ethnicity in the United States. The authors argue that as America becomes increasingly diverse, many white Americans are experiencing fear and anxiety about the changing demographics of the country. This fear, they contend, is rooted in deep-seated racism and a sense of threat to white dominance and power. Martin and Lakin begin by examining the historical context of racism in America, tracing the roots of white fear back to the founding of the country and the institution of chattel enslavement of the ancestors. They argue that whiteness has long been associated with power, privilege, and superiority, and that many white Americans feel threatened by the idea of losing their dominant status in society. In their book, White Fear, How Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, Roland S. Martin and Leah Lakin delve into the complex and pervasive issue of white fear in America. The authors analyze the historical roots of racism in the country, exploring how the concept of whiteness has been intertwined with power, white privilege, and superiority since the founding of the nation. Martin and Lakin argue that white fear stems from a deep-seated anxiety among many white Americans about losing their dominant status in society as America becomes increasingly diverse. The authors trace this fear back to the institution of chattel enslavement of the ancestors, which was built on the idea of white superiority and black inferiority. This mindset has persisted throughout American history, manifesting in how white Americans have maintained their power and privilege through systems of oppression and discrimination. The authors discuss how the changing demographics of America, with the increasing population of melanin-rich culture people, has exacerbated white fear. As the country becomes more diverse, many white Americans feel threatened by the shifting power dynamics and fear losing their social, economic, and political advantages. This fear is often fueled by the rhetoric of politicians and media figures who exploit racial tensions for their own gain. Martin and Lakin argue that white fear is not only harmful to melanin-rich culture people, but also to white Americans themselves. This fear leads to a sense of insecurity and paranoia, driving white people to act out in violent and discriminatory ways in an attempt to maintain their perceived dominance. The authors argue that white fear is a form of psychological distress that can manifest in various forms, from microaggressions to overt acts of violence. In White Fear, Martin and Lakin challenge white Americans to confront their fears and biases and to engage in honest conversations about race and racism. The authors call on white Americans to acknowledge their privilege and power and to work towards creating a more equitable and just society for us as well. They emphasize the importance of listening to the voices of our melanin-rich culture people and actively striving to dismantle systems of oppression that perpetuate white supremacy. Overall, White Fear is a thought-provoking and timely examination of a pervasive issue that is becoming increasingly relevant in today's society. Martin and Lakin provide a comprehensive analysis of the historical and contemporary manifestations of white fear, shedding light on the ways in which it impacts melanin-rich culture individuals and communities. The authors offer insights into how white Americans can confront their fears and work towards creating a more inclusive and equitable society for us as well. White Fear, How Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds is a powerful and insightful exploration of a crucial issue that is shaping the future of America. Martin and Lakin's book serves as a call to action for all Americans to examine their own biases and work towards building a more just and inclusive society for future generations. The authors then turn their attention to the present day, exploring how changing demographics are reshaping the racial landscape of America. They point to the increasing diversity of the population, with melanin-rich culture people projected to become the majority in the coming decades. This demographic shift, they argue, is leading to a sense of insecurity among many white Americans who fear losing their position of dominance in society. In their book, White Fear: How Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, Roland S. Martin and Leah Lakin delve into the complex and often contentious issue of race in America. The authors begin by examining the historical roots of white fear, tracing its origins back to the days of chattel enslavement of the ancestors and segregation. They argue that throughout American history, white supremacy has been a dominant force, leading to the marginalization and oppression of our people. The authors then turn their attention to the present day, where they explore how changing demographics are reshaping the racial landscape of America. They point to the increasing diversity of the population, with us projected to become the majority in the coming decades. This demographic shift, they argue, is leading to a sense of insecurity among many white Americans who fear losing their position of perceived dominance in society to melanin-rich culture individuals. One of the key themes that the authors address in the book is the idea of white fragility. They argue that many white Americans are feeling threatened by the changing racial dynamics in the country, leading to a defensive and often hostile response to conversations about race and white privilege. This fragility, they argue, stems from a fear of losing power and privilege, as well as a sense of guilt and shame over past injustices. Martin and Lakin also explore the role of politics in fueling white fear. They argue that politicians and media outlets often stoke racial tensions for their own gain, amplifying fears of the other and scapegoating minority groups. This not only further divides the country along racial lines, but also reinforces the idea that white Americans are under siege and in need of protection. The authors also delve into the ways in which white fear manifests itself in everyday life. They discuss how the rise of white nationalist movements and hate crimes targeting us are a direct result of this fear. They also address the phenomenon of white flight, where white families move away from diverse neighborhoods in order to maintain a sense of control and security. White Fear offers a thought-provoking analysis of race relations in America and the ways in which changing demographics are challenging traditional notions of white supremacy. The authors push readers to confront their own biases and prejudices, while also emphasizing the importance of empathy and understanding in bridging the racial divide. Overall, White Fear is a timely and important book that sheds light on the complex and often uncomfortable realities of race in America. By exploring the roots of white fear and its impact on society, Martin and Lakin make a compelling case for the need to address systemic racism and foster greater inclusivity and understanding in our communities. As the country continues to diversify, it is essential that we confront and dismantle the structures of white fear in order to build a more equitable and just society for us as well. One of the key themes of the book is the role that fear plays in shaping attitudes and behavior. Martin and Lakin argue that white fear is driving a range of responses, from overt racism and discrimination to more subtle forms of bias and prejudice. They explore how this fear manifests in everyday interactions, as well as in broader societal trends such as the rise of nationalist and white supremacist movements. In their book, White Fear: How Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, Roland S. Martin and Leah Lakin delve into the complex and often uncomfortable topic of white fear in America. The authors argue that fear plays a central role in shaping the attitudes and behaviors of many white individuals, leading to a variety of responses ranging from overt racism to more subtle forms of bias and prejudice. Through analyzing everyday interactions and broader societal trends, Martin and Lakin paint a vivid picture of the ways in which white fear manifests in contemporary American society. One of the key themes that Martin and Lacan explore in their book is the fear of losing power and privilege that many white individuals experience in a changing America. As the country becomes increasingly diverse, with melanin-rich culture people making up a larger percentage of the population, some white individuals feel threatened by the prospect of being marginalized or displaced. This fear of losing their perceived dominant position in society will lead to feelings of resentment, anger, and a desire to maintain the status quo at all costs. This fear of losing power will manifest in various ways, from overt acts of racism and discrimination to more subtle forms of bias and prejudice. Martin and Lacan discuss how this fear influences the way that white individuals interact with us, leading to discriminatory practices in hiring, housing, and other areas of American life. They also examine how white fear fuels the rise of nationalist and white supremacist movements, as white individuals look for ways to assert their perceived dominance and protect their definitely perceived interests. Moreover, Martin and Lacan highlight the ways in which white is perpetuated and reinforced by societal institutions and media representations. They argue that mainstream media often portrays us in a negative light, promoting stereotypes and perpetuating a sense of fear and distrust. This, fueling feelings of resentment and hostility towards marginalized communities, leading to increased polarization and division within society. Through their analysis of white fear, Martin and Lacan aim to shed light on the root causes of racism and discrimination in America. By exploring the ways in which fear drives attitudes and behaviors, they seek to challenge readers to confront their own biases and prejudices, and to work towards building a more inclusive and equitable society for us as well. White Fear: How Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds is a thought-provoking and timely exploration of the role that fear plays in shaping attitudes and behaviors in contemporary America. By examining the ways in which white fear manifests in everyday interactions and broader societal trends, Martin and Lacan provide valuable insights into the complex dynamics of race and power in our society. This book serves as a powerful reminder of the need to confront and challenge our own biases and prejudices, and to work towards creating a more just and equitable world for us as well. The authors also examine the ways in which white fear is perpetuated and reinforced by the media, politics, and other institutions. They argue that these forces often play on racial anxieties and stoke fears of a so-called browning of America in order to maintain power and control. This, they contend, leads to a cycle of fear and division that ultimately harms all members of society. In their book, White Fear: How Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, Roland S. Martin and Leah Lacan explore the concept of white fear and its impact on American society. The authors argue that the fear of a browning of America, or the increasing diversity and multiculturalism of the country, is leading to a sense of threat and insecurity among many white Americans. This fear, they assert, is being perpetuated and reinforced by various forces in society, including the white media, politics, and other institutions. One of the central arguments of the book is that white fear is often exploited by those in power in order to maintain control and authority. Martin and Lacan contend that white politicians and media outlets often play on racial anxieties and stoke fears of a changing demographic landscape in order to appeal to a predominantly white voter base. By framing diversity as a threat and promoting a narrative of us versus them, these forces seek to divide and conquer, pitting different racial and ethnic groups against one another for their own gain. The authors also examine how white fear is perpetuated through stereotypes and prejudices that are ingrained in white American society. They discuss how the media often portrays us in a negative light, perpetuating harmful stereotypes and contributing to a climate of fear and distrust. Additionally, Martin and Lacan argue that certain political rhetoric and policies, such as anti-immigrant measures and voter suppression tactics, further contribute to a sense of white anxiety and insecurity. Furthermore, the authors argue that white fear ultimately harms all members of society, not just those who are targeted by it. They contend that the cycle of fear and division that is perpetuated by these forces creates a toxic environment in which trust and cooperation are eroded, leading to a breakdown in social cohesion and solidarity. This, in turn, results in a society that is less able to address pressing issues and challenges, such as inequality, poverty, and environmental degradation. In order to combat white fear and its harmful effects, Martin and Lakin propose a number of solutions. They advocate for greater awareness and education about the root causes of white fear, as well as for more inclusive and equitable policies and practices that promote racial justice and equality. They also call for a shift in the way that diversity and multiculturalism are portrayed in the media and in political discourse, so as to challenge stereotypes and foster greater understanding and empathy among different groups. Overall, White Fear: How Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds is a powerful and thought-provoking exploration of a timely and important issue. By shining a light on the ways in which white fear is perpetuated and reinforced in American society, Martin and Lakin offer readers a deeper understanding of the complexities and challenges of race relations in the United States. Through their insightful analysis and passionate advocacy, they make a compelling case for the need to confront white fear and work towards a more inclusive and equitable future for all members of society. In addition to exploring the negative impact of white fear, Martin and Lakin also highlight the potential for change and progress. They argue that challenging and dismantling systems of white supremacy is essential for creating a more just and equitable society. They call on white Americans to confront their own fears and biases and to work towards building a more inclusive and diverse community. Overall, White Fear: How Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds is a thought-provoking and timely exploration of the ways in which race and ethnicity shape our society. Through a combination of historical analysis, social commentary, and personal anecdotes, Martin and Lakin paint a compelling picture of the challenges and opportunities facing America in an era of increasing diversity. This book is essential reading for anyone seeking to understand and confront the complex issues of race, privilege, and power in contemporary America. In White Fear, Roland S. Martin and Leah Lakin delve into the concept of white fear and the ways in which it manifests in America today. The book explores the anxieties and insecurities that many white people experience as the country becomes more diverse and the power dynamics shift. Through detailed research and personal stories, Martin and Lakin dissect the roots of white fear and its impact on society as a whole. One of the main themes of the book is the changing demographics of the United States and how this transformation is challenging the traditional power structures that have long benefited white people. As non-white populations grow and gain more influence, some white individuals feel threatened by the prospect of losing their majority status and the privileges that come with it. This fear of losing power leads to resentment, anger, and resistance to change, as evidenced by the rise of white supremacist movements and discriminatory policies. Martin and Lakin argue that white fear is not only detrimental to marginalized communities, but also harmful to white people themselves. By clinging to outdated beliefs and resisting progress, white individuals are missing out on the benefits of a more inclusive and equitable society. The authors highlight the importance of acknowledging and addressing white fear in order to move towards a more just and harmonious future for all Americans. The book also delves into the historical context of white fear, tracing its origins back to the founding of the United States and the legacy of slavery and segregation. Martin and Lakin explore how racism has been ingrained in American society for centuries, shaping the attitudes and behaviors of both white and non-white individuals. By understanding the historical roots of white fear, the authors argue, we can begin to dismantle the systems of oppression that perpetuate inequality and division. Throughout the book, Martin and Lakin share personal stories that illuminate the real-life impact of white fear on individuals and communities. From encounters with overt racism to subtle microaggressions, the authors provide a nuanced and intimate look at the ways in which race influences everyday interactions. By centering the voices of those affected by white fear, the book emphasizes the importance of empathy, understanding, and solidarity in the fight against racism and discrimination. White Fear also offers practical solutions for addressing white fear and building a more inclusive society. Martin and Lakin advocate for honest conversations about race, privilege, and power, as well as concrete actions to dismantle systemic discrimination and promote equity. By confronting white fear head-on and working towards a shared vision of justice and equality, the authors believe that America can overcome its legacy of division and build a brighter future for all. In conclusion, White Fear: How Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds is a powerful and provocative exploration of race, privilege, and power in contemporary America. Through a combination of historical analysis, social commentary, and personal anecdotes, Roland S. Martin and Leah Lakin shed light on the complexities of white fear and its impact on society. This book is essential reading for anyone seeking to understand and confront the challenges of racism and discrimination in our increasingly diverse world. I'm your royal narrator, Queen Magical Melanin. We trust that you have expanded your understanding through the insights shared by Baba Jelani Bumani Dembe, founder of Majestic Mind Matters University, in our Mandatory Mental Liberation Series special book overview message titled, White Fear: How Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Roland S. Martin with Leah Lakin. Remember this: it is essential to honor the ancestors. We have a unique connection to the ancestors. They endured many unwarranted struggles, preserved our melanin-rich culture, and passed down invaluable wisdom through many generations. By honoring the ancestors, we pay honorable tribute to our roots and draw great strength and much-needed inspiration from the unwavering resilience and royal legacy that has paved the way for our present and future generations. Ancestral reverence is a powerful way for us to continually uphold our own melanin-rich identity, heritage, and cultural legacy. Here is an ancient Alkebulan proverb to keep in mind: if you think you are too small to make a difference, you have not spent the night with a mosquito. Remember this as well, whenever you are in the presence of anyone saying, they don't see color, it actually means, they don't see you. As a member of our melanin-rich culture, you must strive for knowledge of self, for greater personal awareness. Always treat yourself kindly and seek to live a totally awesome and gloriously fulfilling melanin-rich culture life. So, like, subscribe, and share this very special melanin-rich culture link with everyone that you care about and that really cares about you and all of yours as well. And thank you for listening. Ashe.